Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Carla Eli Show. I am so excited to be here with you guys. I know that I was gone for about 2 weeks, but we are back. And speaking about being back, we have Roxanne back on the conversation because I realize that a lot of us ladies need help and guidance with relationship stuff. So not so much dating, but more of like, okay, what should I do if me and my partner are going through XYZ thing? So today I invited Suzanne, wife to wife. We're going to be talking about deep things, relationship issues, relationship struggles that we might have gone through or that we see from an outsider perspective, and we definitely have opinions on them. And so I'm really excited for this call. Suzanne, thank you so much for being here again. I don't
Thank
know if you
you.
have, I don't know if you want to just insert something before we start talking deep.
Yeah, no, I love talking to you. I really, really know that we have so many similar ways of thinking. And yeah, I'm just happy to be talking to you again.
Yes, I'm super excited. And I don't know if you saw, um, but actually one of the videos that I posted on talking about, how my husband and I met, like it did really well. So thank you so much for inspiring that conversation, because I think that without having a guest or having someone that I feel comfortable with, I wouldn't feel comfortable enough or open enough to talk about vulnerable subjects or just topics that I don't know, I probably wouldn't speak on if I was just speaking to myself. So thank you so much for inspiring that entire conversation. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I love that so much. I loved hearing your story, so I'm sure a lot of women are so happy to hear that. And I feel like whenever we do talk, it does get stuff out of me too, because I'm like, I love this topic and you always inspire new thoughts in me. So, that's such a compliment.
I'm super excited to dive deeper into these questions. And you know what? Let's just get it right off the bat, because off the camera or behind the scenes, we were discussing about a video that we both watched on a divorce lawyer being like 70% of women initiate divorces. Because this episode is really targeted towards women who are in a relationship, in a marriage, just in a committed relationship, passing the talking and the dating stage. Like, we're here, this episode is really for those who are already in a relationship. So, um, going back to this video, this divorce lawyer stated 70% of women initiate divorces because they are tired of doing everything. It's not necessarily because they don't want to get married or maybe start a new relationship. It's because they're tired of doing everything. And one thing that I found very interesting apart from that is that it actually increases when both partners are or have a college degree, like when they're both educated. And I have my own 2 cents on why that is. But I wanted to hear your opinion to these statistics and to maybe what are we doing wrong in a marriage? Because obviously this is a lot, this is a big number. 70% of women initiating, like what's going on? What do you think are some common problems apart from just women feeling like they're doing everything? How can we avoid even doing everything ourselves? Please,
Mm.
I want to hear your take.
I think that is a great question. I think this is probably one of the most important topics right now in marriage is because nowadays women know that they don't necessarily need a man for money. And so when they see, wait, I'm doing everything, I'm working, I am doing all this stuff around the house, I'm doing most of the stuff with the kids, they are just like, well, I can do this without this person. Why would I stay? So I think that is probably what's happening. Plus an old mindset of women over functioning for men. I know so many women that are in their 30s, that are in their 40s, and they are so burnt out because, like you're saying, they're just trying to do it all. And it just finally, they crack. And so I always tell women, I always say this, do not ever overextend yourself for a man. And I love my husband. He is truly the love of my life. I'm not going to overextend myself because I know he's capable of also stepping in. And I think a lot of women will come at it, and it has a lot to do with how women are raised. they'll have like this martyr perspective, almost like, oh, well, I just have to do more to be valuable. I have to work, and I have to do all the caretaking, and I have to do all the cooking, and I have to do all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping. And so it also comes into the ball's really back in our court where we have to say, I'm not going to do everything. That's not what gives me value. Like, this man is going to love me and he's going to enjoy me more, and I'm going to enjoy him more when I'm thriving. And that means setting those boundaries for yourself. He can do a lot too. And so I do think that's one of the biggest reasons that women are filing for divorce, is because I see this firsthand with women in my office, that want a divorce. They have an education, they have this great job, they're, very pretty, they have been raising the kids. And I'm thinking, how did you end up in my office? And I do think women just crack. They go, you know what? I can't do anything. I can't do everything anymore. So it's 1,000% like you're saying. I do think the root of it is you have to tell yourself, no matter what, you're still going to take care of yourself, and you're not going to overfunction and start mothering a man who needs a wife, not a mother.
Exactly. And I completely agree. And so what are some early signs from, maybe the women that you've worked with to catch yourself and be like, okay, no, no, we have to set boundaries here, because it could be as small as setting the chores of the house. That's how it starts. It starts with setting boundaries within the chores of the house, and then it starts to just snowball. Because if you don't, I'm gonna say it what, us maybe Latina Mexican women always say, la mujer hace al hombre, which means a woman makes the man. And that's pretty controversial, I would say. However, from my personal experiences, from the women around me, so on and so forth, boils down to the same thing. A man will do to you what you allow him to do. And so I bring it back to us because I don't want to make the ladies who are listening to us feel helpless or hopeless, like I'm doomed. I can't fix this. It's not about me, it's about him, and give him all the power to control how the relationship dynamics work. Ladies, the ball falls back to our court, and we really get to decide where we want to move our marriage, if we want to move it forward, backward, or stay where we are. And so, Suzanne, sorry to cut you off, but what are some early signs that women can start, realizing, oh, wow, I need to really set some boundaries because this is translating into me doing everything? Please share.
Mhm. I actually completely agree. I think if first of all, if this guy loves you and is crazy about you, he is going to respect your boundaries. And so early on, in dating, I always say, don't move in. Don't start doing his laundry. Don't start doing all this stuff, especially in dating, because now you're just acting like a wife, and he's gonna think, oh, well, I already have everything, and I didn't even have to marry her. So that's the first, like, almost rule, I would say. But then early on in marriage, if you start feeling this pressure, like, oh, I need to have dinner ready by 5:30, even though you're exhausted. Oh, I need to make sure I do his laundry and my laundry and have it all folded and put away. You have to sit back and really think where that belief system came from. And so I say this all the time. It does make some people mad. My dad treated my mom like a queen. He enjoys life with her. He, paid for a housekeeper. He didn't expect her to do all this stuff and run herself ragged. He wanted a companion. He wanted, a woman that he could enjoy life with, go on vacations with. And so I really saw that treatment firsthand of like, oh, well, my dad doesn't expect my mom to be his maid and his mother and his nanny. And so I was fortunate that my belief system was like, I'm allowed to be pampered, and I like taking care of myself, and I'm going to prioritize the things that make me feel good. So if that's not natural for you, which even for me, there are things where just because of how our society is set up, the pressure that it puts on women, you
Mhm.
have to say, no, I am not someone's mother unless they're my children. I am not going to burn myself out and build up resentment. And so start paying attention to if you're starting to be resentful. I think resentment is the number one indicator that you are not setting boundaries for yourself in your marriage. And so communicate that, it's like you said, just early on, say, and it is a little annoying if you have a husband who's expecting you to do all this. That's a conversation. That's a whole different conversation, right? So my husband always viewed me as someone that we enjoy life together, right? And so I can have very open conversations with him. All right, what's for dinner tonight? What should we do? We both figure it out. My husband makes some amazing birria tacos. So it's from the beginning, it's been a very shared load of stuff around the house. So, for me, maybe it's a rare exception where it came pretty naturally, but if it doesn't come naturally, force yourself to just say something. Hey, well, I would ask you like what is it that a woman is over functioning in?
Mhm.
Because if you're doing his laundry from day one and that's not what you want to do, you just kind of have to have a hard conversation with yourself like, "Oh, I'm not going to do this guy's laundry."
Mhm.
Or, "Oh, I'm kind of tired of being the one planning the meals every night." So be brave enough to have that conversation and not in an angry, aggressive way. It's part of marriage, right? Like you're in a partnership, you're in a companionship, and you're doing what it takes to preserve love. So communicate that.
Mhm.
What do you prefer to do around the house? What do I prefer to do around the house? Because because for me, I do not mind folding laundry. My husband hates folding laundry. I don't love cooking. My husband enjoys, cooking and figuring out recipes. So it's also that as well. So, in a very, sorry if that was a very long answer, but I do think this is nuanced because some women, like you said, are playing the victim, like, oh, no one helps me, no one does anything. And so you have to make that mindset shift of how did I get here? What belief system brought me here and why am I doing this? And that man is not helpless. So remind yourself that man is not helpless.
Exactly. And so I'm going to share the complete opposite. I'm so happy that you got to experience that with your dad and your mom because I also got to experience and see my mom be treated like a queen. But as the eldest daughter, I was parentified at a very young age. And not only that, but like it or not, I didn't grow up with my biological father. So automatically for me, I grew up with like the sense of a little anxiousness and like a little scared, like, oh my gosh, what if this person leaves my mom because of me? Even though that's not true. And my dad never made me feel like that. In my head, as very early on, that was like my thought. And because I love my mom so much, I'm like, I am going to be the best kid ever because I do not want my mom to, leave this relationship or get left because it was my doing, you know? And so I don't even know where this came from, right? And maybe through generations of that guilt of being the eldest daughter. Whatever. I was a parentified child, so I grew up believing and thinking I cannot relax until all the chores are done, until the house is clean, until I did my chores, until I did my homework, until all these things, right? And so when I moved in with my husband, I was didn't realize it, but I was stressing out because I hadn't done my little OCD checklist of all the things that I needed to do before I earned that quote unquote relaxing time, right? And so it came to a point where my husband was like, Carla, chill, chill out. What are you doing? I'm not expecting you to cook, to clean, to do laundry. Like you're stressed out for house things. Like they're gonna be there waiting for us if we relax or not. And so it took me, and then I realized like, oh my gosh. That's true. The world's not ending. I didn't do laundry. I didn't wash the dishes and I'm sitting down and nothing's happening. So it's also calling yourself out because I know that I work with a lot of women who are the eldest daughters and have in a way this guilt. And so I didn't actually start changing or rewiring my mind until I was married. And thankfully, I chose someone who loves me for me, not for the work that I do, not for what I quote unquote bring to the table, but just loves me as a person and loves me for my energy, that he was able to, or I was able to do more self-discovery and heal more parts of myself. And so, and of course, because I have this tendency of, in a way, like control freak because of my upbringing, I have to call myself out consistently. And it's like ups and downs. So if you relate to this, there's moments where I'm good, where I'm like, okay, I'm not doing everything. I'm not washing the dishes. I'm not cooking. I'm not vacuuming, sweeping, all doing all the house chores, grocery shopping. I'm not doing everything. We're splitting it and we're in a consistent schedule. But life is life. And sometimes just from your autopilot, I see myself just doing everything, doing everything again. And my husband has nothing to do with it. He's just kind of like watching me and observing me figure myself out because it's my own problem. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have resentment because I'm doing everything. But again, it's not a him problem. It's just a me that I just took control over it. And, life is life. So it's like an up and down cycle for me where I have to consistently call myself out and be like, okay, you're being a control freak. You're starting to act like his mother. You're doing these things. Let it go. And sure enough, when I bring it up to my husband, usually it ends up me being in tears because I feel so overwhelmed. He's like, must I remind you every time you're not alone? It's okay. Ask me for help. And then it's again that little cycle. And so that's something that personally for me, because I know that I don't want to be doing everything for the rest of our marriage, I struggle with it now. I face it head on now in the early years of my marriage because when babies come into the picture, it's going to be a lot harder for me to do everything. And I don't want to do everything. And so, ladies, learn from now, learn within your relationship. And by the way, I want to touch a point that Suzanne said. You see how we have the same perspective on not moving in with a boyfriend? Never sell yourself short. Don't move in with a boyfriend. Don't move in with a fiance, and never let a boyfriend keep you from meeting your husband. Okay? So we completely agree on those things. Don't sell yourself short. Um, and so if you are someone who's also the eldest daughter and struggles with this in the marriage, you're not alone. However, I urge you to call yourself out, feel comfortable addressing those imperfections and those insecurities that you have of not feeling enough, right? Because that stems from childhood. And know that your partner, when you choose a partner who loves you, they will be there to help you. And they, like Suzanne said, they are not helpless. They had to be adults before meeting you. Okay. That's why I always say choose someone who has recession-proof skills, who's recession-proof. Someone who, had their own place before meeting you. Someone who knows how to do their laundry, who knows how to grocery shop, and if not grocery shop, who earns enough money where they can go out and buy food. Hello? Choose someone who meets the bare minimum of being an adult.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Wow. Oh, I mean, that's amazing. And everything you said is such good advice. And to have that wisdom at a young age, I think is just gonna, it sets your marriage up for so much success. And also, your husband also gets props too because he loves you, not because he wanted, oh, well, you're my maid now. Oh, well, you're this, well, you're that. Because there are men who had mothers who overextended themselves for everyone. And so there's men who do expect women to perform all those tasks. And so I would say early on, start trying to figure out what kind of setup did that guy have in his family system? And does he just enjoy your presence, or is he looking for any woman that can fill that role in his home because he wants to be helpless? And that is like I think that's such a green flag in a man that he wants you to rest and he just wants you to enjoy life. I would say if you see that early on, and all everything else is in place, right? Like he's faithful, he's loyal, he has integrity. That is going to set you up for a really enjoyable life because you have to think of it, we're in marriage for the long run, and so that's going to make marriage so enjoyable 20 years down the line. Because if you have a husband who's thinking you should be doing the dishes because you're a woman, you should be doing this because you're a woman, oh man, is there going to be some resentment there? And then also just how you said you caught yourself as the oldest daughter those false beliefs. I think so many women need to hear that, truly. That is wise beyond, like, our years to recognize that early on. And I'm also an oldest daughter, and so like I've told you, I got married after I was already an attorney, and so I'd already been burned out by that oldest daughter mentality by the time I met my husband. I was already like, if you're an adult, I'm not parenting you. I felt like so much of my life I was parenting everyone else, and that really does stem from being an oldest daughter. And to figure that out before you have kids will save you so much pain. Because I know once I had my first kid and then I had another one a year later, oh man, I'm thankful that, like you said, I had married a man that is fully capable, that was pulling those all-nighters overtime so that I could sleep after having our children. And so those qualities will save you years down the road.
Absolutely. And I saw a video that said, choose a man that can struggle well. And
Mm,
so I say, that's why I say, choose a man that's recession proof, that has recession proof skills, that is recession proof, where no matter what you throw at them, what life throws at them, they figure it out to get back up. And so one of the things with my husband was, because everybody likes to say, well, look at his family, like his family dynamic, which I do think is important. However, there's those exceptions where because they have no family, they are so strong and they're so generous and they're so good to you because they don't want you to go through the things that they went through.
mm,
And so they seek out partners who what they really want is just energy, which is what my husband was looking for because my husband had no one. I mean, he was left, adopted, fought for, and then he became like an independent child or whatever they're called, where they move out when they're in their teenage years. Like he was already a man by the age of 17. And so
wow.
hence why whenever we met, I'm like, oh, thank God, you're not like 10, 13 years older than me. You're just 1 year older than me, thank goodness. And so hence why he never had these expectations of what a woman was supposed to do. He was thankful for whatever the heck I did. If I got ready, he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that you got ready. If I like made him coffee, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful bare minimum because he wasn't even used to someone loving him like that or just doing something for him. And that was very new for him. And you know what? I use everything to my advantage and I love that. And I give him the best treatment. And that's why I'm not really worried of him of unfaithfulness or anything like that. Never in my mind have I ever doubted him and I'm very thankful for that. But it also goes to show how damaging red pill content can be. Because I think the men that you're referring to are men who are red pill, who claim to be traditional, but are looking for a maid or a nanny or like a indentured servitude, right? And so that's the difference between a provider, a man, a good man, a generous man, is that he doesn't expect you to do these things versus someone who has never had a family, who has never been in love, who's consuming red pill content. That's very, very dangerous. They're not
Mm.
the same. They're very different. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about when I say red pill.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think the red pill, it has caused that whole movement has caused so much damage. And what I think that entire the whole thought system boils down to is they want a woman to be their everything. They want her to be beautiful in a social media model kind of way. So they want you to have like almost this altered look about you, and they want you to have their kids and look like you didn't have their kids. They also might expect you to make some money, and then they also want you doing all the traditional stuff on top of that. And it's completely what you said. They do want someone who waits on them hand and foot, and that'll just destroy your life. That'll take away any freedom that you have. And so much of, I believe, making a marriage that really is enjoyable and lasts is still being yourself in that marriage, right? And so the things you loved before marriage that are good and healthy, you still want to do them in your marriage because that's what makes you unique and
You.
special and fun. Yeah. And so by giving into that very only traditional viewpoint, it where's your free time? Where's the time that you have that you're not waiting on someone else hand and foot? And I don't think it's smart. I'm always going to be very against making a man the center of your entire life 24/7 because that actually makes you less attractive. Honestly, it makes you less attractive in a romantic relationship. It also makes people less attractive in friendships. No one really wants a relationship. Sorry about that.
You're
No,
good.
no one really wants a relationship with someone who just disappears in the relationship. That's not the fun. Relationships are fun when there's something strong on the other side.
Mhm. Ooh,
Mm,
let's talk about that. That's actually my first question. What is a healthy relationship supposed to look like? So we just
mhm,
said number one, decentering men, decenter a man. Okay, even if it's your husband, he shouldn't be your entire world because that is draining and it's exhausting and it's unattractive to your husband, to yourself. You look in the mirror and you're like, who is she? I don't know who she is. You stop taking care of yourself. And then to make girlfriends too, oh, I cannot tell you. Okay, take it from me. You heard it here first. Anytime a woman's obsessed with a dude or with a guy or has multiple crushes and all they have to talk about is the guy that they're talking to or the guy that they just broke up with or the guy, man, immediately block. Immediately block. I can't. I just can't do it. I cannot do it. I'm sorry. I don't care how successful you might be financially, how pretty you are, if you match my aesthetic, because yeah, there's I do have several lists and rules for you to be able to join my group of friends. I will tell you that. I don't care. If you're obsessed with dudes and guys and crushes, get away. I run from you.
mm.
Anyways, what does a healthy relationship look like? What is it supposed to look like? How do we avoid speaking to you about divorce? Please share, Susan.
Yes. So what I see, what I think is a number one sign that you're in a toxic or unhealthy relationship is you're always finding yourself making excuses for this man. And you're always just, well, it's not that bad. Well, it could be worse. Or you're telling your friends and family, he is a really good guy. Like sometimes he just does this, but he's a really good guy. And this can come, in the form of he's actually physically harmful or he's cheated in some way, some kind of infidelity. So that's a huge red flag that your marriage is going to completely blow up is if you find yourself making excuses for a guy. And then also if you find yourself confused a lot, right? So you just are constantly like, okay, is this normal? Is this not normal? You know, truly, yes, there's going to be, heated conversations in a marriage. That's normal when you love someone. When you love someone, you're going to get frustrated at times. But overall, a healthy relationship is peaceful. It is. Even in the annoying times, you still look at that person and you go, man, I love you. I am crazy about you. And so if there's just a lot of confusion, I would say you're also in a toxic relationship. And then the last red flag that I would say, you're in a toxic relationship is if you just don't even recognize yourself anymore. Like you said, you don't hang out with your friends anymore and you don't do the creative things that you used to love. You're not interacting in your relationships the same way. You're losing your healthy friendships. That's another sign that you're in a toxic relationship. And then just on a very practical level, I tell women, if a man is insulting you in any way, that is not normal. I never once saw my dad use curse words towards my mom. I never saw him call her names. I never saw him, make a mockery of her. I saw nothing but respect. And that should be your normal. It's not normal to call your wife any names, curse word or not. So, those are just some things that I would look out for that eventually, if those are present, the negative things that I mentioned, at some point you're either gonna lose your mind or yeah, you will end up in a divorce attorney's office.
No, no, I agree. And it's a very thin, fine line that we have to respect. When we talk about these boundaries and we place these boundaries and, try to guide you and teach you through these things, it's not because we're being super squared or like judgmental, super conservative. It's because these boundaries are meant to protect your marriage. And what we want is a divorce-proof marriage. Like that's what we're building here. We don't want you to speak to divorce attorneys. We don't want you to find yourself in a very dangerous situation because you didn't know that these things were toxic, because toxic behavior can also be normalized. And so there are some men who are very strategic and very it's frustrating to describe these men, but they're very strategic and very smart and manipulative. They are able to normalize their toxicity by not reacting to it. And so one of these things can look like, oh, well, I only like pushed you a little bit, or like it's just like they start to normalize it and then they increment their toxicity over time. And so by the time that you have a black eye on your face, right? You're like, you're confused. You're like, how did I even get here? Because they slowly increment their toxicity and normalize all the little things. And so it's good to call those little things out as soon as they happen, even if you feel uncomfortable, but it's to unmask the monster that is in there, if there's even a monster. Because sometimes, okay, ladies, like I said previously, la mujer hace al hombre. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, guys are going to try to test you to see how far they can go. Always, always. And it's not because they're evil. It's not because they want to intentionally hurt you. It's by their design. That's why, there's a lot of more male dominated fields than women, like than what women would normally do. Like it's very rare for you to see a professional man nanny. You're more likely to see a woman nanny, right? And it's very rare to see like a guy or a woman maybe like cutting off a palm tree. You're most likely going to see a man doing that because it's the risk factor, it's the adrenaline. And so don't demonize uh, don't justify, but also don't demonize men, because what I'm seeing right now on social media as well is like this hatred towards men and like their natural, I guess, like behavior. Like there's a balance to both of those things. So even though I don't want you to justify certain behaviors that they do, I also don't want you to demonize their natural, like their natural tendencies or behaviors, meaning like them loving to work or them loving to like exhaust themselves at work or them wanting to provide for you, them being very masculine because that's in most men in their nature to do so. We want to encourage those good behaviors because they want to do those things. However, there is a balance. I don't know if this is making sense, Suzanne. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that you are completely right in that, I first want to say I totally agree with you. It's not your fault if you don't notice a toxic behavior right off the bat, because if you didn't have the right kind of treatment in your life, you won't even know that something is toxic. And so that's why listen to women in good relationships that are telling you that's not okay. That's not okay. And there are men that I think are too far gone because they're never going to treat a woman right. And that's when you walk away. But then there are some men where you can ask them, like, what are you saying? Why would you say it that way? I'm your wife. I require gentleness. And out in the world, yeah, go be aggressive in your business, go be aggressive wherever you need to. But I'm your wife and you're going to treat me this way. And so it is a nuanced conversation, because there are some men that are still being refined in relationships, just like we're all being refined. You can't, it's like you can't look at every little thing. Like if your husband, is having a bad day and he says something and then you're like, "Oh, you're so toxic. I saw it on this podcast." You're so, yeah, like we also have to look at the bigger picture of who they are. And
Discernment.
yeah, and then I do agree that, you do teach people how to treat you. There are some people that are manipulative no matter what. There are, you could say like abusers. They're manipulative no matter what. But I say this, this is what you made me think of. Early on in your dating relationship, do not overlook behavior. Do not be very adaptive and willing to see the benefit of the doubt. Bring it up early on if you see something early on, because it's like you say, men know what you'll put up with. I think they have a very keen sense on when a woman respects herself and when a woman doesn't. Train yourself to be the woman that's like, I deserve peace. I deserve a man that's going to treat me correctly, and I'm not overlooking stuff, and I'm not putting up with nonsense. And so I think that's how you set yourself up early on. Yes, there's always going to be the exception that there's very manipulative men out there that are just looking for a challenge to unfortunately tackle and bring down. But that's where, kind of like we talked about last time we had a conversation, ask your healthy friends and family with good perspectives their thoughts on this person as an extra safeguard to make sure that he is a safe person.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And it always goes back to us women. Like I'm not here to blame the men. There's a lot of content out there that will place blame on men and a lot of other content that will only place blame on women. But I care about your heart and I care about the intentions you set out for your relationships. And so I really hope that this message is resonating with, with you listeners, but also, my Eli ladies. And so and I'll be quite frank with you, my husband's still being refined. We got married when he was 24, and with a little context that I shared, about his upbringing and things like that, he has no idea what the hell is going on, okay? Neither do I, but I have a little bit more because I saw a healthy marriage growing up, but my husband has nothing, no context. All he's ever experienced was like cheating and lies and drug addiction and alcohol addiction, like the worst of the worst that you guys can ever think of. That was his normal. So here I come and he's like, "What the hell is this? What is this woman? What is this?" Right? And so whenever he tries to act all like macho on me, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." First of all, I don't take it personally because I know who I am. But second of all, I'm like, I sleep next to you at night. You have to remember that I'm a woman. I'm not your bro. I'm not a dude. I'm your woman. I am your wife. I take care of you just how you take care of me. I see you snore. I see you fart. Like all the things, right? And so when I bring him down to earth and help him understand and see eye to eye on certain issues, it's so much easier to move forward and walk together instead of just building resentment. And am I annoying? I'm absolutely annoying. And I tell him, I know I'm annoying with these things, but I have to talk about them and we have to discuss them because this can be a pattern that I can see because I know both of us that will be an issue later on and I just want to tackle it together. And in the moment, my husband's like, "Ugh," right? He gets like a little annoyed, but he then 30 minutes later, he collects himself and then comes back. But that's just how I know he works. He needs his alone time or like space time to think and to analyze what I just, dumped on him. And then he comes back and he's like, "You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. Let's get better at XYZ thing." And then we just learn. It's a learning curve. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I've definitely messed up in other areas where he calls me out on it, but it's having and being okay with having that open communication and acknowledging when you mess up. It takes a lot of humbleness. It sucks when you're the person that is at fault, but you just got to do it. You just got to do it.
Hmm.
I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice because we are at the end of the day all being refined. And if someone is willing to be if he's a good man at his core and he's loving you well, of course we're gonna you work through things because we all have weaknesses. We all have our blind spots. And my dad came from a similar upbringing, it sounds like, to as your husband, and he really took that as I don't want that life for my future, and became the best kind of person you could ever become. And so I think that's so cool. I love hearing about your husband and you because I just think you guys have such a great dynamic and it's so sweet. And it's such a good example of like talking to women who are in loving marriages. Everything you're saying is so beneficial because it's like, yeah, that's exactly how we should be working through things. So I love that.
Yeah, and I mean it's not easy, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation because if your relationship is not looking like this, if your relationship is constant kind of like battles and frustration and just aggression, hate, resentment, and then like great makeup sex, for example, because I know that there's a lot of people who are into like super aggressive fights and then making up in the bed, but and I know that's like rated R, but we need to talk about it because again, I want you to be able to call it out now before you spend 10, 20 years with this person, or even if you're, 20 years in, being able to have the courage to either walk away or work within the relationship if the goals are still aligned, which leads me to my next question. How do you know that your partner is still interested in you? A lot of women complain like, or just, come to me and they're like, okay, I feel like I'm always pursuing, I'm always the one kind of doing everything, initiating the effort. How do you know if it's either too late or if he's completely lost interest in you? I don't know if you have any stories or anything you want to add, Suzanne, to that
Mhm.
question.
I think I see a lot of different situations regarding this topic. So I think first and foremost, this is why always the best quality in a guy that you'll see early on in dating is that they understand marriage is a commitment, that through the babies, through getting older, through the loss of a loved one, through sickness, they're committed. And so that's what you want first and foremost, because yeah, you're going to have ups and downs in life. So but then on another note, how to know if someone isn't interested, I think it's probably pretty scary to be in a marriage with a man that is not showing interest in you. That's really unfair to you, and I think you can trust your gut if you're starting to think, "Wait, he doesn't even try anymore." Like if a guy's not initiating intimacy like he used to, if he's not having conversations with you, that is an immediate alert of, "Okay, what's going on?" And it's understandable, maybe you just had a baby and you guys are up all night. It's understandable when people are tired, but even then, you'll still feel like they're interested in you and you'll still feel love, right? And so I would say listen to your gut if something is telling you this guy's interest has changed, because in my opinion, that can often signal that there's someone else. So I do find that to be, and maybe sometimes there are some men who get boring in relationships. I do understand that, just getting lazy. If it's not like a really alert red flag, he's found someone else, something weird's going on, and it's just okay, he's getting lazy in the relationship, then I would just say go ahead and communicate that. Again, that is, don't ever, and this is how I saw in my parents, and this is something that is very in line with my personality. If something is bothering me, I'm going to bring it up to my husband. Like, he has always respected my heart and my mind. So if there's something that's concerning me, I've always had the freedom to bring it up, and he calms my fears, he calms my nerves, or he just changes a pattern. If I say, I would like it if you chose the restaurant tonight. He's going to choose the restaurant because he's adaptive. He wants me to be happy. And so I think it's first discerning, okay, is he really not showing interest in you because there's someone else on his radar? That's scary. That's a problem, and that's not fair to you. Now, is he just getting lazy in your relationship? Bring it up. Because any of us can get lazy at times. Um, I don't like laziness. It's something that really bothers me in relationships. So I do know that some people just, you might be tired at times. There might be hard seasons in life, but that's definitely something to communicate about. Don't let it go into your mind. I think a lot of women just bottle it up and worry about it. Don't live with those. That's your husband. That's the person you love. He should be calming your fears, and he should be stepping up for you in ways that you ask.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And something that has helped me so much is I know that some of you ladies think that this tool is satanic or like devil worshiping or whatever, but it's helped me, okay? It's called the Enneagram. A lot of companies, a lot of businesses, a lot of people use the Enneagram to kind of identify our strengths and our weaknesses. But once I identified which Enneagram type one I'm attracted to, because I know that I can't deal with people who are overly emotional, I can't. And then two, see and understand where my husband's coming from because he's in the headspace. So really quick breakdown of the Enneagram. We have three different types of brains. It's the heart, the body, and the mind. And then we filter life differently based off of our defense mechanisms. So once I identified my husband's defense mechanism, I was able to work with it. I know how I need to speak to him. I know how I shouldn't speak to him. I know how short I should keep my conversations with him. I know that he needs, and it sounds crazy, like, oh, you're doing everything. No, no, no. It's just I want our relationship to work and our marriage to work. And this is part of our strengths as women. We just know how to communicate and we understand each other in a level that a guy can never, okay? And if he does, that's a little weird for me. I don't know. I don't really like guys who are like extremely highly emotionally intelligent. I just find that to be very weird. And that can also be like manipulative. It's weird. It's weird. Okay. So I prefer it this way where my husband has no clue in regards to like how to manage certain situations because he's just awkward, but that's part of his defense mechanism, right? And so I don't take it personally after we're done arguing or having a discussion. He needs a break, right? Or he needs to be away. It's because I understand that in his defense mechanism, that's what allows him to process things a lot better. For me, I'm the opposite. I need like, that reaffirmation or whatever. Or the other thing that I notice is that I need to move my body. That's because I'm in the body center that I filter all of my emotions and everything based off of like my intuition. And so we function differently. But this allows me to not take things personally. How did I even get here? Uh,
I love it.
okay.
No, I
So,
love it.
but I'm giving you a tool that you could use in your own relationship to not take things personally and to not make the same mistakes over and over and over again, or and to calm your own nervous system down sometimes because then the opposite could happen when we are too clingy with our partner and we make them crazy. We make them crazy because again, we're centering our partner in everything that we do. And so we think he lost interest, but maybe he just needs a freaking break. Maybe he doesn't want to like hear us right here in his ear all the time. Maybe he just needs a little break. So you have to catch yourself and find where you are. And I'll be frank with you, with my husband, I thought that like being gentle with him was a way to go, but it turns out that he likes me being a strong Latina woman. Like he likes for me to tell him the way that things are, like right there and then, and no sugarcoating it. He loves honesty. And even if that honesty seems rude to me, because I find it to be rude, I wouldn't like it for someone to talk to me the way that he apparently likes and listens. But we communicate that and we're learning each other. And I don't know if I mentioned this in my previous conversation with you, Suzanne, but like in the beginning of our relationship, we would take days without talking to each other because we couldn't figure out a solution to certain issues that we had. And then we broke it down. It became less and less and less to where now it's like, okay, after an hour, we're over it. Like 30 minutes, we're over it. Like move on. Let's just move on with our life, right? But it takes work. And how Suzanne said, it takes commitment. The other person has to want to be with you. You can't force them. You just cannot force someone to be with you. And so my next question, Suzanne, well, before I ask the next question, do you have anything to add to what I just said?
I think that everything you said is so on point. It is about learning each other. Taking two people of two totally different upbringings is about figuring each other out. And I love the Enneagram, and I'm a Christian, but I've also seen like the conversations about the Enneagram. I love it, and I have learned so much through it, even with friendships. And I'm so glad I know my husband's personality type, and however someone figures out what kind of personality type someone has, that's just a social skill. That's just being smart and wise about how to communicate with someone. And that's a valuable tool for every relationship. So of course it matters in your marriage. So I think that really is the key ingredient, is having that willingness to just learn each other and learn what your spouse is receptive to.
Absolutely. And my husband's very quick at figuring me out, but he doesn't he's not one to read the way that I do. We're very polar opposites, but that's why it works. We balance each other out. But I 100% agree. I think the Enneagram actually saved my relationship with my parents. I stopped taking things personally. I started to protect my own heart and even to understand me a lot better and call myself out whenever I'm being the way that I normally am or just like an autopilot because of the Enneagram. So I really always recommend everybody to invest a little bit in self-help and really understanding how the mind works, how thoughts are real things. Neuroscience is very interesting. So please invest in that because it really does help in the relationships. And now moving on to my next question, which was, okay, now that we've answered, like, how do you know if he lost interest? What if it's not so much that he lost interest, but we're not giving him an opportunity to pursue us? How
Mm.
can we encourage him to pursue us in our every like day-to-day life. Like we're normal women. Like how can we continue to encourage our partner or spouse to pursue us?
Mm, I think that's a great question. And I think in the way that there's nuance in different personality types, I think that also applies here. And it depends on what kind of husband you have. Because it's funny that you said your husband likes honesty, because my husband is also very receptive to my honesty, which I love because I love people who will just let me say what I need to say. And so, if I just tell my husband, I really miss you. Like it's been a week since we hung out, just us. It's been, like if our kids are sick and we've just been in the trenches of parenthood for like 2 or 3 weeks, we almost both look at each other and go, I miss you. Can we please go on a date? And so I think it just boils down to what your husband is like. And so, I think it's also, this is what pops into my mind. If your husband's very much a homebody, uh, that husbands also need to know you do need to do things that your wife enjoys. So I don't know. For me, if my husband wasn't, if he wasn't picking up on that, I would just bluntly say, it's really insensitive, or it's just not fair to not do things that I enjoy, because that's an important part of marriage. There's things that he enjoys that I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that, but I love him so much that I'm going to do things that he enjoys. And so that's just an important part of a marriage. And so, depending on the situation you're in, figure out how to communicate that. Something that does bother me is if a man has just become totally passive in a relationship. That bums me out for women, right? Because they know how to date you, right? They did that in the beginning. And so if you need to say that, you can say that. I miss spending time with you. I feel like now that marriage has gone along, you're not pursuing me as much. So again, it just depends on how receptive that guy is. Now, then take it one step further. It's like you said, also being overly clingy, if you're a man or a woman, if you're in a friendship, if you're in a romantic relationship, that can kill relationships really fast. And I have heard this from numerous couples that are very healthy, is also give your spouse time to miss you. And so I still go and hang out with my friends. I'll go to dinner with my best friend. We'll go catch up on all things motherhood. Some of my friends had a a Galentine's party. I'm gonna go and do those things. I'm gonna go to the gym whenever he's home on the weekend. Okay, bye. I'm going to the gym. So it's also like giving your husband time to miss you. I think that's important in any relationship. And if people get mad and say, "Oh, why do we have to play these games in relationships?" It's not a game. It's truly having that self-respect that makes you interesting as a person. Even if it's, you know what, I'm gonna go read this book right now. I'm gonna pick up a new hobby. Whatever it is, that's valuable to you as a person. And so, if it's just you want him to pursue you more and he's not just being lazy, maybe just create a little bit of intrigue there. I don't think it's a game. I think it's doing things that make you interesting as a woman, because you should never stop growing.
No, I completely agree. And that's, I mean, that's something that I do. And I think it was Margarita Nazarenko who said, and even if you are playing games, isn't that fun? She's like, isn't that fun? Like, you're gonna be with this person forever. Might as well make it fun. And like I said in the beginning as well, ladies, these are boundaries to protect your marriage and make it divorce proof. What I find and what I see is that when you preserve your individuality in a relationship, both of you flourish if you're in a healthy relationship. That is like the first sign that you see that you're in a toxic relationship. Once you start working on yourself, once you start investing on yourself, pursuing your purpose, pursuing your calling, and this person is consistently nagging and complaining because you're leveling up and he's not letting you go reach your goals, that is a clear indicator that this person is not the best for you and you are in a toxic relationship.
Mm.
And so that I think that that's a very clear indicator of being in a toxic relationship when this person is not helping you achieve that due to intimidation, manipulation, narcissism, whatever it might be. but that's a clear sign that you're in the wrong relationship because your partner wants to support you in everything that you do, even if it means cutting your time with them. Or if you have a glow up, they want you to glow up because naturally he will also glow up. Your team.
Mm,
Um,
mm, that's
which
so good.
leads me, I don't know if you want to add anything to
No,
that
that's so good. That's so good.
question. Which leads me to my next question. You said sometimes I just tell them what is wrong and I tell them what I think, and and your husband's receptive to that. So let's talk about holidays. Valentine's Day just passed. And because I get questions all the time on how do I ask him to get me XYZ thing, or should I even ask him? Should I allow him to give me the gift that he wanted to, or whatnot? I'll be frank with you ladies here. You heard it here first. I tell my husband exactly what to get me every year for a holiday, for any holiday like Christmas, my birthday, Valentine's Day. One, because he's an anxious person, so he sees a lot of options and freaks the heck out. He's like, I can't. You tell me which one. And so luckily for me, I know exactly what I want all the time. I just know, right? And so what I do is I circle the thing that I want, and then he has to put in the effort to go to the store or to find it, to Google it, whatever the case is. But I tell him what I want, and then he does everything from there. And from day one, he told me, I am not a planner. I suck at planning things because it's tied to his like anxiety, like he freaks out. And then he doesn't do anything because he freaks out. So like it impairs him. So it ended up working out because I know exactly what I want in every season of my life. So I just guide him, point him to the to the direction that I want, things that I want, the gifts that I want, and then he puts in the rest of the effort from there. And
Mm,
it works for us because that way I'm happy with what I got. It, calms his anxiety down and nervousness down, and everybody's happy in the picture. However, not every relationship works like that. Some people might think that I'm a control freak or that he's not putting in enough effort, but this is just what works for me. And now, Suzanne, what are your thoughts on these things? Like
mm,
what is your perspective on like the holiday? Like
mm.
what is, I guess you could say, just like a non-negotiable, and what should be accepted and shouldn't if we want a divorce-proof marriage.
Mm. I think okay, so I have two main thoughts on that. One, I talk a lot. Like I say a lot of my thoughts out loud. So if I want something, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to keep it a secret. And so I'm very against like harboring your secret thoughts like, "Oh, I hope he gets me this. I hope he gets me that." If you know what you want, yeah, like you said, just go ahead and tell him. Now, the flip side is I have seen men who Mother's Day will go by, Valentine's Day will go by, year after year after year, and like a guy doesn't make any effort and he'll put effort in other places, right? So it's like, okay, so you're telling me this guy can plan, you know, a Super Bowl get together, or he can go and put together his whole fantasy football team, but he didn't get you anything for Mother's Day, not even a card, not even ask you, "Hey, what do you want to do for this day?" That's when I start to think, "Okay, I really don't like that." And as a woman, if you're already married and you have kids, it's not like that's like the reason you're going to leave him. You do need to bring that up. You need to say, "This has really affected me and really hurt my feelings that you didn't even consider getting me something." So, just in general, that really I actually think it exhausts women whenever they never get a present, nothing is ever planned, and they always have to tell him, right? Because it's like, wait, you're not putting any thought here. But there are women like us who are very verbal and outspoken. That's not the same thing as a guy who doesn't put effort, right? Because, like, your husband wants to make you happy. You know he's going to do what it takes to make you happy. So, those are two very different scenarios. So, for me, I tell my husband all the time, like, I told him a few months ago, I want an iPad. I don't know when I'm going to get it, but I want it. So, that's what he got me for Christmas. I'm happy as can be because there's still an element of surprise. Like, okay, he got me the nicest iPad or whatever. I tell my husband early on, I don't like red roses, so I like colorful, fun flowers. And if you get me flowers for Valentine's Day, that's what I want. Um, but then I will say I do appreciate, and again, every marriage is different. I do appreciate when my husband takes some initiative, but runs it by me first. Uh, like he'll say, I think we should go to LA for your birthday. I'm like, cool, that sounds great. And then he'll plan it all. Love that. So, what I think this boils down to, what you and I are both saying, there has to be effort, but it depends on what that's going to look like for your personalities. So, there has to be effort, and there can't just be no lack of effort. It's a lack of effort if the holiday rolls around and he doesn't even ask you if you want to do something. He doesn't even ask you anything. That bugs me. I don't like that, and that is what I think is going to hurt a lot of women in the long run, because they're going to be very resentful that they always have to tell him every single time, I want to be celebrated, you know? So that's when I think it becomes a problem. But yeah, everyone's personalities are different. Everyone's personalities are
Absolutely.
different.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on and stay there for what you just said, that he's able to plan an NFL or like a get together, football get together, is able to buy whatever, or set scheduled things for the things that he cares about and prioritizes. The way that I want you ladies to react is, don't take it personally. Instead, take notes and move accordingly. Oh, he just showed you he's able to do this. Guess what? Next Disney trip, he's doing all of it. Next trip, wherever, he's doing all of it. And when he says, oh, but I can't, you gotta bring it up. This is how I do it. I'm not saying it's healthy or not, but my husband has definitely tried to like, um, what is it, like been act up like a little lazy before. I mean, it's normal. And I'm like, but wait, didn't you just schedule a flight like a couple months ago? Like, didn't you just, you got this, babe. You got it. I believe in you. And just like hype him up a little bit. And he's like, I didn't get away. Because sometimes, again, going back to the same thing, men will always try to see how far they can go with you. And you just have to remind them sometimes, but don't take it personally. Don't take it to heart. And even though it's so hard to just say, and it's a lot harder to do, I know what I'm telling you. When you are able to see it from a third person perspective and be like, okay, I'm not going to take it personally. This doesn't define my worth. This doesn't define who I am. But instead take notes and move accordingly. You are going to be able to solve a lot of problems in your relationship and in your marriage a lot quicker, faster, and more efficiently, rather than if you just took it personally and acted out of emotion. You get nowhere when you just act out of anger, out of resentment. You just hurt yourself and you get less and less attractive. I don't want you to do that. So instead, we don't take it personally and we just observe, we take notes, and we move accordingly from there. And just because, and listen, ladies, just because I tell my husband what to get me for the holidays doesn't mean he's not solving problems, other problems. Whenever my husband and I were, when we were doing long distance for almost 8 months, he was, and we didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have a place to stay because we didn't know where we were going to end up at after, that hard process. He was booking the Airbnbs. He was making sure that the bills were paid. He was making sure that I had a place to stay and that these places were in good neighborhoods. He was doing research on everything. So just because he doesn't know how to quote unquote put, get me gifts for these holidays doesn't mean that he doesn't solve problems. He absolutely solves problems, but this isn't his area of like expertise because again, his background and with me being like the first woman he's ever, been with and been committed to, he's now realizing, oh, I got to step up my game in these areas. And it's interesting because I was actually with my family on Valentine's Day, and my family, like we have high expectations. The women are treated like exponentially, like they're treated very well. And my dad's a gift giver. And so is like my sister expects the same thing. And because my brother saw my dad being the way that my dad is with my mom, he does the same thing with his wife now. And so being surrounded by a whole bunch of balloons and flowers and all these things like around the house, because we were sleeping there for our holiday, he was like, he came to me privately and he's like, babe, I am so sorry that I didn't go all out for you. I will do better next year because this is the first year that we actually had where we were in the same place. Last year we were away from each other, but he still sent me roses. I still receive my flowers. But because what I saw growing up was like an excessive of everything, my family I think is very materialistic. He's like, oh my gosh, I gotta step up my game. And so he came to me privately and he's like, babe, I will do a lot better next year. I know that I'm still gonna buy you whatever you want tomorrow or, on Valentine's Day, but I'm so sorry. I'll be a lot better next year. And so it's just, again, we're refining each other and it's not to take it personally. This is normal. We want to have these issues. I'd much rather you have issues about Valentine's Day than have issues about, him not helping you out or you feeling burnt out. I don't want those issues for you.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
which leads me to my next question. Work wife. Okay, so I've been hearing this a lot lately, about work wife, work husband. Thankfully, I'm married to someone who's in an industry where it's like 98% male dominated. So like I do not have to worry about my husband having a work wife or anything like that. But even then, he would never put me in a position where he would compromise our relationship. What the heck is work wife? I don't know if you're well aware of this work wife and having women colleagues that are really close to husbands. What is going on? Can you give us context to that? And what do you see? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I actually have had videos go viral talking about this because I didn't realize it was such a hot topic. I say this and I will stand by this to the end. A man that truly respects you is not going to call a woman at his work wife, and he's not going to let her call him her work husband. I just again like I've just learned so much from my parents' marriage. My dad has always had very strong boundaries with other women, and I've seen people early on in my career as an attorney, I had seen people call each other, "Oh, my work husband." And I often find it is women who are desperate for the validation or the attention from that man who are calling him her work husband. I think if a woman knows that a man is married and she's calling him her work husband, I think there's some shady behavior there, and I do think she feels like she can compete with the wife. I can tell you, I'm in a male dominated career, right, as an attorney. There's no way in all the world as a married woman I would ever call another man my work husband. That like almost grosses me out because I'm like, I have one husband and he's the only one that gets that title.
But like, how do they behave is my question. Like, what are like the signs or what does that even
Mhm.
look like? Because a lot of women don't even know what is going on because a lot of the women that I mentor, they tend to be either stay-at-home wives or stay-at-home moms,
Mm.
or they work from home. So they're out of the loop with all of this. But then, then they see that, oh wait, my boyfriend or my fiance, my spouse is texting this lady at like 10 p.m. or like 11 p.m. They're out for a corporate dinner and like I see that they're having a lot of fun together, or he didn't invite me to the work dinner, but I see that all his other colleagues are with their spouses or their partners. How does this dynamic even happen? Like what does it look like? I don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, I think that is just a man that is still looking for validation from other women. I do think it boils down to that, and that in his heart he was never really sold on true faithfulness in a marriage, because men understand this. I promise they understand this. They understand boundaries with women, because in if the reverse situation was happening and he loves you, it would bother him. If you were, even if you're not calling each other work husband, work wife, if you were crossing these boundaries with other men, your husband would care. He would be alerted, thinking that's not just work. And so that just comes from a lack of boundaries. And I think every woman has her own personality and how she deals with these things. I tend to be very fiery, and if something bothers me, I'm not gonna put up with it, right? So for me personally, if my husband didn't have high boundaries with a woman, I would just say something right off the bat. I would say, "Oh, okay, so you still are open to," obviously this is not my relationship how it is, but if a woman was in that situation, I'd almost tell her to say, "Oh, so you're opening up our marriage to girlfriends. So does that mean I can do the same?" Like, I'm very much giving men a taste of their own medicine because I do believe that's sometimes the only way they learn. But it goes back to I am not even going to negotiate in that conversation with a man because the disrespect is already too much. Like that, and this might be unpopular amongst some people, that would make me lose interest in someone. If I saw that a man didn't have good boundaries with other women, I would lose interest because I work with men all the time. I have to text them, hey, can you cover this case? Hey, are you willing to take this case? Hey, what are your thoughts on this that I file? I'm not asking any other man personal questions. Oh, how'd your kid's school go today? Oh, what are you doing this weekend? Like, that's just, if you are married and you are really dedicated to not getting a divorce, you have to have good boundaries with the opposite sex. I think that's non-negotiable to protect your marriage.
Okay, then should I agree, but then my follow-up question is, so then what about like opposite gender friendships? Do they even exist?
Ooh, man, I see this is another thing that I've got a lot of feedback on social media. I've definitely had some viral videos because this is a hot topic on this. I don't believe if you're a married woman or you're a married man, no, having a best friend of the opposite sex is crazy to me. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Why is my very masculine, very attractive husband gonna be doing with a very feminine, very attractive woman best friend?
Hmm.
What do they have in common?
Yeah. And the
And
thing is if a woman believes her husband that she's just a friend, she's either being naive or she's lying to herself. And I always say, that's not how a faithful man behaves. Men, I promise with my whole heart and soul, men understand this. They understand that it is weird for a married man to have a best female friend that's not his wife. And it that is going to be their future spouse. I promise you every time. I hate to be so blunt sometimes on this because I think it hurts feelings and people are like, "What about this exception? What about this exception?" But
there
it's like
are exceptions.
there
Like,
are it, but I will tell you this, I'm not going to have a best guy friend. And my husband's there is not going to be another woman being like, "Oh my gosh, he's my best friend." Like they are tripping if they think that's going to happen. And I would say, even if someone thinks they fall under an exception, there still has to be a boundary. Like, you don't go and have dinner with your female coworker if you're a married man, one on one. And I have so many colleagues that are men that I respect. They're great guys and they're married. And they had good boundaries with me when I was single. They weren't like, ooh, let's go hang out. It's like they included their wife. We were all friends. And so, even if someone thinks they fall under the exception, I'm like, "Ooh, be careful with that line because it should really be couples friends, not this is my best guy friend." And you know what? I have gay friends. Um, that's different. They're
mhm,
obviously not interested in me, but even then, I'm only telling my female best friends my very intimate, like, details of my life. That's still really only reserved for my best girlfriends and my husband.
hmm. Yeah, no, no, I completely agree. Actually, my parents are the one of the exceptions too, but my dad has boundaries and set in place because my dad works with a lot of women. He actually prefers working with women because they're more efficient. So he says he's like in this job, I love working with women. They're more efficient, they save time, they're problem solvers, like And so, but they do have set boundaries on these things. And there's a lot, and of course, with that, with my dad working with a lot of women, um, my parents had a sit down conversation and they were like, listen, there's going to be a lot of rumors about me. And he told my mom, like, there's going to be a lot of rumors, but you got to know that, like, I have a lot to lose. Why am I going to be doing that? And with the company that he works, it's like they always have like smear campaigns. It seems like it's very cutthroat. And so he's like, but they have these conversations and there's a lot of boundaries in place for him to be able to work with a lot of female coworkers. And
Mm.
most of the time, most, if not all the time, if they've earned my dad's trust, my mom meets them. So it's like it's very interesting, their dynamic. But my dad has been doing this for like 30 years, 40 years, I can't remember. But they have it down to a T and they're the exception to this rule. However, has there been like incidents where there's miscommunication and a lot of stuff comes up because of this miscommunication? Absolutely. It's a headache. It's a headache. So if you want to avoid often? No. But it does happen. So if you want to avoid any of these conversations, it's like just be have high boundaries and high like being high alert of these things because it's your marriage we're talking about. It's not something to be
Mhm.
taken lightly. And
Mhm.
so my last question, because I know that we've been talking for over an hour and 20 minutes now, which is good. Um, okay, so we hear this all the time. Relationships and marriages are about going through the ups and downs. However, as healthy women who are in healthy marriages, who have high standards, who love themselves, when is it okay to decide to walk away? And what are the downs that are just a no-go?
Mm,
Again, this is going to be very biased because it's from, us, but what would you consider a like non-negotiable of a very bad season of your marriage?
mm. For me, so I think every woman has to take a good hard look at herself and decide before marriage what her deal breaker is. And so for me and my husband, because we were a little older when we got married, we already communicated infidelity is a deal breaker. And this is a topic where I do have people in my life who disagree with me. That's always if someone were to be unfaithful to me, I'm just out of there. That is my rule. Um Now, when kids are in the picture, I absolutely understand why people work through it, but I always tell women if you're gonna stand by him after infidelity, you don't get to be bitter and miserable forever because then you're not really staying for the kids. Because if you're bitter and miserable, you're hurting your kids anyway. And so, the ups and downs, I just say like your husband cheating on you is not the normal part of ups and downs. That's not ups and downs. That's not something I would do in the downs. Faithfulness to me is like a non-negotiable. And so that is, a bit of a controversial topic. There are women that say things like, "Oh, well, it's, like they say it's something that can be worked through." Maybe it can be for other personalities, but not for me. I say this all the time. I will never set the tone that I'm a man's ride or die through that level of disrespect. And that's just my non-negotiable. And I also have a daughter, and so I always think of the tone I'm setting for her. Am I going to teach her that this is just something that men will do to her? No. Like I'm not going to teach her that because to me, thinking of like any woman I love getting cheated on, it really hurts my soul. Like it's like, no, how could you do that to this beautiful, amazing woman? And so I think normal ups and downs are like it's just the hard parts of life, right? Maybe you say something hurtful to each other. We're gonna hurt each other's feelings because I have a sharp tongue whenever I'm upset, and I'm so glad that my husband has so much grace for me in that. And misunderstandings, the sickness, we all have to realize like life is very unpredictable. There are very, that you'll see older couples who the wife or the husband has early onset dementia, Alzheimer's. You know, you stand by someone through everything. You stand by someone through everything. But for me, infidelity is not that.
Mhm.
That's yeah.
And
No, go
so
ahead.
does infidelity also mean like pornography, for example? Because I know that
Mm.
I mean, at least for me, consuming pornography behind my back would be a big infidelity. Messaging or having like an app where you can message women would be a big infidelity, even if you never saw each other. Um,
Oh,
so I think,
1,000%.
yeah, and okay, so I want to insert this here because I feel like a lot of women probably get into arguments like I did at first with my husband. I'll be very vulnerable here. So Instagram has this algorithm where if you say that you're a male, they're going to feed you naked women like there's no tomorrow. They're going to feed you naked women. They're going to tempt you. They're going to, because this is like the differences between our ads, my husband and I's ads. My husband watches like motorcycle, cop stuff, what is it? Like armor things and gun things, like very masculine, very things that I really could care less about. But he watches all these things and he consumes them. And so because he's responding in this way, Instagram and YouTube catch on to those behaviors, that those are male dominated interested behaviors. So the first ads that pop up are like AI girlfriends or naked women and all these things. And we went through it together. He's because we sometimes, I don't like to go on my phone when I'm about to go to sleep because my phone is like work. And so we go on his page for stuff, and he's like, look at these ads, they're so weird. And I have to continuously press dislike, uninterested, thumbs down for it to eventually stop showing me these things. And so at first I was like so sad because I was like, oh my gosh, he's getting fed these things because he watches these things. And like we had a whole discussion. He's like, you made me feel so dirty. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad. You made me feel like such a loser and so dirty when that's like not what I was doing until, more men started talking about it like, yo, Instagram, what is going on with your algorithm for men? I'm tired of looking at naked women. And so then I was like, oh, I feel bad. And then I apologized to my husband. I'm like, you're right. I guess I'm just paranoid at this point because I get questions all the time about these occurrences where they go through their phone and then they find all these things. And what if that's a sign? I even paranoid myself a little bit with these things because this is this is new. All of these things are new. And so I think that that's infidelity. But the reason why I say this is because if your husband or spouse or boyfriend, has the same type of ads fed to them, and but they're watching like the things that I just listed, they're the things that they like, don't believe what the algorithm is also showing you, but also you get an instinct feeling like, is this man doing something behind it? You just know. And so whenever this came up for my husband, I was like, that's out of character for him. Like, I don't see him doing that. So I knew that there was a possibility of me being wrong, but because I'm a little paranoid because of all the stories that I hear and you encounter, I was like, well, just in case he needs to know that this is my boundary, right? But sometimes it is truly the algorithm, it's Instagram, it's YouTube. And when they catch on to the behaviors of the things that men like, they're going to show them specific ads. They're going to show them naked women because the goal of the app, you guys, ladies, is to keep them on the app. It's to make them buy. So I'm sorry that I infiltrated a little bit of self-doubt with that, but there is a possibility. We also have to keep in mind that a lot of these Instagram, a lot of like these apps and these corporations and businesses don't want us to be in healthy marriages because then we are more likely to buy things more intentionally. We're not going to benefit, like the consumption as much when we are in healthy relationships, when we are focused and disciplined in how we are using our money. So we have to see it as a big picture sometimes. But there are cases where men do and are addicted to pornography when they are, have a double life almost with an online persona. But I think personally that there are signs. There has to be some signs to show this behavior beforehand. Is it
Mhm.
just me, or do you think it's the same, Suzanne? I don't know.
I do think that there are generally signs, and sometimes women won't realize that they're signs. And it can just be a variety of things. So sometimes I've had women tell me, I didn't see the red flags, I didn't see anything at all. But as an outsider, almost every time I've thought, but I did. I did see the signs, and they were there. Either this guy had impulse control, or he didn't make any eye contact with anyone, or he would get very frustrated very quickly. So I would say if you really trust your instinct and you look close enough, I do think that there's going to be signs. Now there are men that have truly like they are addicted and they do hide it really well. That's very much a real thing. But in a lot of the scenarios, and I've seen a lot in like the last 10 years throughout my life, there was something there. There was something there, even if it was like, I we can't get along. There was just something there. Now, um, I do think social media is a rough place right now. Like there is so much nudity, there's so much like social media models, there's corn, they're trying to pull you onto their corn sites. It's a pretty rough place, and even before I was married, I actually I was like in this Bible study of men and women, and there was a lot of men talking about how much stuff will just pop up on their feed and they'll unfollow. And so I think that there's just differences because I will sometimes like get like a lingerie ad that seems so explicit. I'm like, oh my gosh, there can be a kid, like this is why kids can't be on social media, right? Because I'm like, I'm literally just following a meme page and this ad is so explicit. I'm like, what is this? So that is how social media is, right? Because they're trying to hook people and get you. Now, I think if a woman keeps on seeing over and over again, like these actual accounts continually
Hmm.
recommended, then it could be a sign, or there has to be, because for me, so my husband just got off social media when we got married because I just started feeling, for me, I'm like, I don't like social media. I don't like how many, but I just think there's a lot of social media models. I don't know how else to put it.
No, I think it's a very dangerous place for men. I think that men shouldn't be. I'm like, ew, why is he posting? I get an ick whenever a guy's like showing like that he's buying flowers for his woman and he's like cleaning the house and he's doing that. I'm like, ew, that's ick. You're so feminine for that. I don't like it. My personal
Mhm,
opinion. But my husband deleted Instagram, but then he re-downloaded it because I was like, "Ugh, I can't flex anymore that you don't have social media." I was like so upset. But he re-downloaded it because that's how he stays in contact with some of his colleagues. And so he's like, yeah, but I'm like, why can't you just text? And he's like, it's because we send pictures to each other. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And so, I trust him and he doesn't tell me anything about, my social media, how I literally work on social media. But I agree with you. I think it's a very dangerous place right now for children and for men.
mhm,
Because I even get like I also get pops up of like girls' boobs sometimes or like different things. I'm like, "Ah!" And I like go scroll past it. I'm like, ew, I don't want to see that. And it's not ill like ew a woman's body, but like it's just uncomfortable. Like, no.
mhm,
And so I agree with you on like if you keep seeing the same account popping up, that would raise some flags there if it's like all the time
mhm,
that like every 3 videos, that should be, a sign. But I
mhm,
agree with trying to get your man off of social media. So
mhm.
your husband got off of it as soon as you
He
guys got
did.
together?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is he got off of it before I even realized how much of an epidemic this was and before like OF even became a thing. Um it was just something that I just felt like I'm really glad that he did because I I don't know. I always say like, okay, if you're giving yourself the opportunity and mindlessly scrolling and you're giving yourself the opportunity for all these bodies to keep popping up in front of your face, like what if I was posting my body like that? Like there's just something that and it's I think every couple's different. My dad's on social media, right? Like he follows me. I know that there's really good men. I have friends who sometimes are on social media. There's good men. I think men just can't scroll mindlessly, and once things do start popping up, they need to be very careful in the same way I would be careful. Like I personally don't watch like and people might think this sounds so prude, but like I'm not going to watch even explicit scenes in movies and TV because I also don't want lustfulness like in my vision, in my eyesight. I just want it off of me. I think men and women can both be prone to this, but men are an easy target on social media with the algorithm. And women are very smart in how they market their content and grow their followings like that. It's just it is a personal decision, but I think, as long as men have an openness with their girlfriend or wife and they have some accountability systems in place, that they would have honest conversations or be willing to deactivate it if they were starting to struggle. Because you can be accountable to yourself and say, I'm going to struggle with this or I might struggle with that and get out of that situation. I always use the example of like early on in my life, I, was a little bit of a drinker and I just realized, yeah, alcohol doesn't really sit well with me. For my personality, I just got rid of it altogether. So I knew my weakness. So I think like every man has to know his level of weakness and what he's susceptible to. And it's like if you have to know your husband and what you trust hit on his word, right? And so it's like a gut instinct. And so I absolutely think men can be on social media and it can be fine. But I just think with the mindless scrolling, I don't like that for a man. That's where I'm like, okay, but then also if your husband's right there scrolling with you, I always tell women like he's obviously not trying to hide his feed. So where there's secrecy, that's where the red flag should pop up. Like, wait, why
Mhm.
are you not letting it? Like my husband can go through any of my DMs. My husband can go through any of my photos. He can scroll my feed with me. He can see what pops up. And so that's also another level of accountability that I think men can have. But even just like back to our original question, to me, the use of corn is unacceptable. So that's also a deal breaker. I view it as infidelity. And that's another thing that I do see a lot of women work through with their significant other. But it just, for me, I'm like, no, that's not something I'm willing to work through because my husband already knew going into our marriage that's such a deal breaker for me. So then I would feel ultra betrayed. Like we literally had this conversation. And so that's why, my husband's always been willing to be like, whatever, I'll put an out accountability app on my phone. I'll always do anything to make sure I'm trustworthy. And so that's a long process. It's a long-term goal that men need to have is to protect themselves from falling into the cycle of lust.
Mhm.
And because at any point, you know, if they're not careful, an algorithm can get their attention. So I think men need to always be on guard.
No, I completely agree. And we all have different non-negotiables and different definitions of down. For me, one of them was like financially. I don't know why this is so important to me. I need a guy to be making more money than me. I need him to be financially stable. I don't know. I don't know. For me to enable to for me to be able to respect a man, he needs to be financially stable. That's just how it is, and be able to afford me and our future children. But there was a season in my life where we were in this transition period with my husband. I think I talked to you about it a little bit last time we spoke, but during this a year and a half of transition, my husband was kind of like on pause for work. Didn't want to commit to a job because we were waiting for the acceptance letter for his new position. And I told myself, okay, well, I'm giving him this time, but if he doesn't, pick up the slack, if he doesn't get accepted to this, that's where I'm not moving forward from here, right? And so you have to know what your downs is. You are going to go through ups and downs. Like that was a down right there. Us making the sacrifice of him changing careers for a better life. We went through that together. Now we're up, we're up. And the next down, might be like, I don't know, us being broke for a little bit when we buy our house because we just made a big investment together. But it's like there's a purpose behind that. There's not like you sacrificing all of yourself for this person. Whenever you have to sacrifice all of yourself for a person, there's a lot of resentment that's about to build up. And most of the time, in my opinion, it's just not worth it. Call me selfish, call me whatever. I'm not about to do that. Especially if they knew going into the relationship you were not going to accept any type of um addiction. Like that's a big non-negotiable for me, whether it may be alcohol, stimulant, pornography, or like being a shopaholic, for example. Like I just can't. If you don't know how to control yourself, how can I trust you with anything else? I personally can't. That's not a down that I'm willing to go with you on, and that's just my boundary. So that's where we're going to wrap up the conversation. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for being a part of this conversation. And I feel like we can go deep together, which is very rare to find someone who can do that with me. So thank you so much for saving this time for us and for the ladies who are listening. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have part three because I didn't even get to ask you all the questions that I wanted to. So thank you
Yeah,
so much.
of course. Thank you. I love talking to you, and it was so insightful.
Thank you. And then we'll be seeing you ladies next time. Bye-bye.